You sign for a package without reading it. You glance at the total on a receipt and throw it away. You tap your banking app, see a number, and lock the screen. None of it feels like writing? Not really. Writing is supposed to be poetry and letters and your name carved into something that lasts. But the first humans who ever wrote felt about their marks the way you feel about that receipt. They weren't trying to be remembered, they were trying to keep track, and one of the very first things they ever wrote down was beer. Go back more than 5,000 years to southern Mesopotamia, in what is now Iraq, to a city called Uruk. It was one of the first real cities on Earth. Tens of thousands of people pressed together in mud brick streets. And a city that size has a problem you have never had to think about. It has to remember things no single mind can hold. Who delivered grain, who owed sheep, who had been paid, and in what, and how much was left. So someone in Uruk pressed a cut reed into wet clay and made a mark. Not a word, a count. The earliest writing we have is not a story, it is a spreadsheet. What did those first tablets actually say? Almost all of them say the same kind of thing. Quantities, measures of barley, numbers of animals, lists of workers and what they were owed. Scholars who have catalogued the thousands of tablets from this period, like the archaeologist Hans Nissen, found that the overwhelming majority are administrative. Receipts, inventories, ledgers, the accounting of a city learning to count itself. And one item shows up in those ledgers again and again. Beer. In Uruk, beer was not a luxury. It was food, and it was wages. Workers were paid in daily rations of barley and beer, and somebody had to track every jar. The sign for beer, one of the oldest written symbols we have, began as a simple little picture of a jar. A drawing of the thing itself, before letters existed to spell it. But writing did not appear out of nowhere. For thousands of years before the first tablet, people in this region had been counting with small clay tokens. A cone for a small measure of grain, a sphere for a larger one, little shapes standing in for goods. The scholar Denise Schmant-Besserat spent her career studying these tokens, and she argued they are the true ancestors of writing. Here is how it may have happened. To lock in a deal, traders sealed the tokens inside a hollow ball of clay. But a sealed ball hides what is inside. So before closing it, they pressed the tokens onto the soft outer surface, leaving their shapes stamped on the shell. And then someone realized something that changed everything. If the marks on the outside already say what is inside, you do not need the tokens at all. The container had become the message. The count had become a symbol, and a symbol you can scratch into clay is, almost by accident, writing. There is a tablet from this era that stops people cold. It records a staggering amount of barley, around 134,000 litres, tracked carefully over 37 months. And in the corner is a single name, Kushim. Kushim may be the oldest name in human history that we can still read. Not a king, not a hero, not a god. As far as anyone can tell, Kushim was an accountant, the official responsible for that barley, and for the beer it would become. The first person whose name survives wrote it down to sign off on an inventory. Sit with that for a moment. Before we recorded a single law, a single prayer, a single line of poetry, we recorded who was holding the beer. The stories came later, much later. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest great work of literature, the one scholars like Andrew George have spent lifetimes translating, was written down more than 1,000 years after those first account tablets. For 10 centuries, writing existed, and almost no one used it to tell a story. They used it to count. And this was not only a Mesopotamian habit. Writing was invented independently more than once, in Egypt, in China, in Mesoamerica. And in case after case, the earliest surviving marks are practical: records, labels, tallies, claims. The urge that pulled writing into the world over and over was not the urge to be heard. It was the need to not forget a number. Which brings you back to your receipt, to the banking app, to the list on your fridge that just says eggs, bread, batteries. You probably think of those as the boring opposite of real writing. But they are the original. They are the direct descendants of the first marks any human ever made. Shakespeare is the rare exception. The grocery list is the rule. The first thing a human ever wanted to make permanent was not a feeling. It was not a memory. It was not a name for the gods. It was a quantity. It was who owed what. It was the beer. So the next time you sign for a package without reading it, or glance at a total and throw it away, stop for a second and look at it. That small record of who has what and how much is left is 5,000 years old. You are not failing to write. You are doing the oldest writing there is.